Good evening, everyone. This is Mayor Harmon, and I'd like to call this regular meeting of the City Council to order and state that all council members are present via teleconferencing. And now I would like to lead you all in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll wait for the clerk to put up the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'd like to ask the city attorney to please report out on closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council did meet in closed session on one item of conference with its labor negotiators with represented and unrepresented groups as noted on the council agenda. The council provided negotiating direction, but no final or further action, no reportable action was taken. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anyone has joined the meeting tonight for the swearing in of Chief Scott, that item has been postponed out of respect for the passing of Detective Luca Benedetti and to dedicate this meeting in Detective Benedetti's memory. And I'd like to take a few moments to address the tragic events that took place this last week in our city. We are all grieving this week as we grapple with the senseless act of violence that took 2 lives and injured another. We all mourn the loss of Detective Luca Benedetti, a decorated officer who gave his life on Monday, May 10th, to keep our community safe. And we also recognize and support Detective Steve Orozco, who was injured in the line of duty. Both men, as well as other officers involved, are brave people who proudly put their lives at risk every day to serve our community. While the investigation of the incident continues, some things are clear. A wife has lost her husband. 2 little girls have lost their father. And San Luis Obispo has lost a great man, and we are all grieving. When faced with tragedy, we have a choice. We can let it darken the lens through which we see each other, or we can come together as one community to remember the humanity that we all share. I see how our community has come together through the many condolence cards and flags at the police department and outside City Hall, the blue ribbons adorning mailboxes, light posts, and trees. And we can feel it when we pass a stranger on the street and stand in the checkout line at the store. We have all been reminded of the preciousness of life. I think we've all hugged our own children a little bit tighter this week. What binds us together is stronger than what divides us. We are all made of flesh and bone and blood. Our community has compassion for each other, and we care deeply about one another. We can overcome this, and we can lean on each other for support and support one another, even through our differences. So thank you to everyone in the community who has come out in support of Detective Benedetti and the SLO PD and the entire SLO City family. And with that, I'd like to ask the city manager to please present his report.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for those thoughts and words tonight, and happy to give the report tonight in honor and memory of Detective Benedetti. I'm going to cover just some areas that I think is important for the community to be aware of, and we'll talk about those more in detail. We do have Chief Scott with us tonight. Tonight, as you've noted, Madam Mayor, was the night that we intended to swear in Chief Scott before the community. We've postponed that out of consideration of all the effort to focus a lot of our thought and emotions on Detective Benedetti. And we'll talk about those in greater detail. I'll move to the second item because Chief Scott will be covering item number 1, and that the county has continued to invite applications for a COVID-19 vaccine clinic. So there is information out there. We encourage the community, if there are populations that you think could take advantage of this, by all means, we encourage those to reach out to the county directly to host a mobile vaccination. The third item, we saw about 40 people sign up on May the 13th in a webinar titled Re-Energizing SLO, and it was posted by our very talented climate team working on energy resiliency for buildings. We had a great turnout and some good ideas. You may see on item number 4 some recycled water signage. We are entering into another period of drought, even though I think all of us know that we need to be thinking as if we're in a constant state of drought. You'll see more information out there in support of water conservation and purple signage around town touting the recycled water that's being used. Aaron Floyd, our utilities director, and his team will be pushing out information as we start to get into probably heightened awareness and community concern around the drought, and they have a communications campaign that we'll be moving forward with. Number 5, and I'll talk about this more as part of the Disaster Council presentation regarding the CDC's guidance, and I'll be providing some clarification tonight around what is required and expected for fully vaccinated persons, residents, and visitors, and that the California's guidance on face covering remains in effect for California. On the Parks and Rec side, I'm happy to talk about a couple areas that our summer swim lesson registration is open. Our Parks and Rec team continues to invite the community to stay safe, stay active, and to sign up for our summer swim lessons. We know that getting kids and families oriented towards water safety early in their life makes a big difference. And so we're excited to offer these services, and we'll be opening up them more and more as we continue to get additional guidance from our public health officer and from the California Department of Public Health. The next item is that we've got a fun activity coming up with our SLO scavenger hunt from 15th to 23rd, which is really designed to encourage people to run, bike, scooter, or skate, and take alternative transportation to get around our bike routes and neighborhood greenways. And so that's what we encourage the community to come out and participate in that event. So, Madam Mayor, with that, I'm going to just invite our new Chief Scott, to next join us and cover the scheduled events for tomorrow and Thursday. I just want to echo many of the sentiments that I've heard directly from the community. Chief Scott has done an excellent job in very difficult circumstances. He has been a place where officers have immediately gravitated to. He's been able to give them counsel and advice, be a liaison with the community, and step in at a very, very challenging time for our department and our community. And I'm very, very grateful for Chief Scott stepping in his first, even before he even started. He was here at City Hall. He's been very active all along the way, and I had the good fortune of, in an informal ceremony, swearing him in so he could start his employment with the city. But of course, we'll do a full formal swearing in. And with that, Chief Scott, I'll turn it over to you to cover the events for the next 2 days.
Thank you, City Manager Johnson. And I would like to thank Mayor and Council as well. And I appreciate your confidence, especially during this time of need for our police department. I am deeply appreciative of the support for the police department. Everything from the community to all of our city staff and all of our elected officials has been overwhelming. This is an incredibly difficult time for our police family, as well as Detective Benedetti and his family. With your continued support, we will heal, and we will put this behind us, and we'll always remember the outstanding legacy that Detective Benedetti has left our department. With that, I just want to provide a few of the details of the upcoming events surrounding his memorial services. And beginning tomorrow at 6 p.m., we're going to have a rosary service. This is closed to the family and the SLO Police Department. And this will be a rosary at the Mission downtown. Going into Friday, the The memorial services for Detective Benedetti will start at 10 a.m. And this will be at the PACT over at Cal Poly. This is
Thursday.
I'm sorry, this is Thursday. Yes, this is Thursday, and it is open to all the public to come and pay their respects. Seating will obviously be very limited. We've had a lot of people already commit to coming out, so best advice is to get there early. But again, we will start that event at 10 a.m. From there, there'll be a procession up to the graveside and Paso Robles. This is also closed to the public due to the size of the service and the limitations by the facility. But that's where he'll be laid to rest. And then later that afternoon, or about 1:30 to 2, there'll be a reception for all of the police department, our partner agencies, as well as all city staff and any elected officials. And that will be over at Madonna. And that will conclude the services, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for that overview. Before I move on with any sort of next information that's typically covered in the Emergency Services Director report, I wanted to see if there was any questions of Chief Scott. All right, seeing none, thanks, Chief, for the presentation tonight, and thank you for all your work and the support that you've given to all the men and women who are serving the department. To just really having an impact, and I'm very grateful for you. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'm going to switch. Just wanted to give an overview of the emergency operations structure. We had to make some quick adjustments to our emergency operations. I just want to share with the council that as of today, we have 3 incident action plans that are in effect in the city. The first one is the continuing update of our incident action plan related to the pandemic. In that case, I continue to serve as the director, emergency service director for all of them, but specifically on the IAP for the pandemic, providing some day-to-day policy and operational directions to the team. That IAP focuses on vaccinations, employee health and public health, reopening and demobilization, which I'll talk about more as part of the presentation. And as you know, continued commitment for communications. The Margarita Incident IAP, this is largely the incident action plan that focuses on city operations and around the Margarita incident involving Officers Benedetti and Orozco. This IAP focuses on employee health, on communications, on community support, specifically the activations in front of the police department and of City Hall. And really the focus, I would say more than anything, is just making sure that we're taking care of the mental and physical well-being of all city employees. The third incident action plan is largely the work that Chief Scott just spoke about, and that is the activation of the PAC and all of the logistics in anticipation of having a few thousand people attend in remembrance and honoring Detective Benedetti, including the program, transportation, logistics, communications, and others. So there has been a fair amount of activity all on the emergency services side to put together and harmonize and synchronize all of these parts. And I just wanted to share this information with the council in case you had any questions about how we're structuring the command teams. On the Memorial IAP, Chief Scott is leading that effort. He is the incident commander, and so he's leading all of that effort on behalf of our city in coordination with many different public safety personnel at Cal Poly, and literally dozens and dozens of volunteers who are helping out with that event. And with that, I'll transition over to Emergency Services Director update. I'm going to run through the traditional case count. Over 20,000 cases, 3.5 million cases in California, 32 million in the United States, and 163 million worldwide. Today's cases in San Luis Obispo County, 24. The really encouraging number is the active cases continues to really plummet and stands today at 79, with most of the cases having recovered and 261 deaths. So we are heading in the right direction, and we're following the long-term models that we've been reviewing. In terms of our ICU capacity, the 42% is available in SLO County. Out of the 38 beds, 22 are occupied, 0 with COVID-19. Residents with COVID-19 in hospital, 2, but 0 in the ICU. So where do we stand in terms of the state's reopening criteria? We are in the case rate. We continue to be just about the middle of the range in tier 3 or the orange tier for both the case rate and the unadjusted rate. Our positivity rate is low. That's in the yellow tier, and also in the yellow tier for our Healthy Places Index. And we've fallen a little bit on testing, and that's largely because I think as the disease prevalence has gone down, the need and interest of individuals seeking testing has reduced accordingly. Where are we on the vaccination side? We have over close to 16 million people statewide that have been fully vaccinated, another 5 million close that have been partially vaccinated with doses administered. So the ones on hand, about 79.3%. Of close to 80%, and about almost 240,000 doses administered a day. And there's 31 days of inventory right now. So there's a healthy amount of inventory. And as we open up the number of individuals who are eligible, that 12 to 16 cohort, we hope to maintain the level of vaccination rates throughout the state. Moving over to a dose administered by county residents, approaching 250,000 in the county of San Luis Obispo, so which is a very good rate. I shared with the council last time that at least in one of our zip codes, we're seeing a very high participation rate. We hope that participation rate extends over to the 93405 neighborhoods as well, and we certainly expect to see that as students and younger persons living on that side of town start to either need to be required or take advantage of the vaccine. Now it's switching our attention to, I think, some of the confusion. I was at Farmers Market on Thursday night, just hours after the CDC made its announcement regarding masks. And I would say standing with the volunteer and seeing people come in, people were confused about what was required. Were masks still required? Were they not required? And so we did hear from the state just yesterday some clarification about where we stand. And so I want to provide that clarification tonight. So face coverings for fully vaccinated persons, face coverings are not required outdoors, except under the circumstances which are outlined on the slide. That includes live performances, parades, fairs, festivals, sporting events, or other similar settings. So here again, this is where we need good judgment and we need individuals to err on the side of caution. For unvaccinated persons, face coverings are required outdoors when physical distance cannot be maintained. It's also required when, and those same circumstances is outlined for vaccinated individuals. And then lastly, face coverings are required regarding the vaccination status in an indoor setting outside of one's individual home, such as public transportation, with an exception where vaccinated persons can visit without wearing a mask or physical distancing other fully vaccinated people in indoor outdoor settings, or unvaccinated people, including children from a single household. So more information in detail. We've been pushing this out via our social media and other channels. And this remains effect until June 15th, when California plans to fully reopen the economy. And then what our understanding is, based upon the most recent announcements, is that the state of California will default to the mask guidance that the CDC has established. With that, we're moving forward with reopening of city facilities. And this has been, I would say, a moving target for us in terms of what's going to be required. And so this is just a sampling of some of the work that we're doing in-house to provide guidance for our city operations, because you can imagine that we might take a different approaches of how we reopen facilities, whether you're in Parks and Rec, or you're dealing with senior services, or you're opening you're opening up offices and facilities. And so that work is underway with the hope is that individuals are getting vaccinated, and if not, wearing a mask, social distancing, and those general hygiene principles stay in place. And then until we move to a recovering endemic, we'll still be allowing for remote work in the city. So we're getting to the reopening plan. We'll be looking forward to the details that come out from the governor. He's made some statements, but the details are unknown. Most city offices will remain closed to public until we reach the green tier or until the system ends. You may be asking yourself, so when is the first time that we plan on meeting in person as a council? Absent any new information that comes out from the governor on June 15th, which happens to be a city council meeting day, the plan is currently to have the first in-person city council meeting on July the 6th. And the seating will be based on public health or other state directives. We just don't know what those are today. Second is our demobilization planning. So as you know, as a disaster council, you have passed a series of resolutions and taken different actions. And there's been a variety of administrative actions that we've taken in order to manage the city response and minimize impacts to public health. And so those disaster council actions range from sign regulations, parklets, parking regulations, safe parking, purchasing, et cetera. And so we'll be returning back to the council on July 6th with recommended action to align our city with local, state, and federal public health standards and any other actions necessary to modify or to keep our economy moving forward. So a little bit of unknown, but that is our plan as of today, and we'll certainly continue to adjust from there. And with that, Madam Mayor, that concludes my presentation tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions from the council. And thank you for the opportunity to present this information tonight.
Thank you so much, Derek. Councilmember Pease.
Thank you so much for the update and the report. And this is perhaps for going back to Chief Scott. I didn't think of it at the time when we had him up. For the Performing Arts Center and knowing the capacity of the PAC, and it sounds like a large attendance, I'm wondering what the plan is to accommodate overflow. If folks don't get a seat, is it going to be projected or speakers outside or something for the overflow?
Yes, I can speak to that issue. We do have a couple of designated areas on site for overflow that we'll utilize as we expand up. If those are reached to capacity, we also have a live stream capability where we can broadcast that out for live stream and people can watch it wherever they may be.
All right, so if they show up and there aren't seats, they'll still have a way to participate safely. Sounds like.
Yes, yes.
Great, thank you so much. That was it, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Pease. Great question. I'm not seeing any other hands. All right. Thank you so much. And again, welcome, Chief. Sorry that you are here under such difficult circumstances this week, but appreciate you being here. And now we would like to receive a presentation on City Farm. So would Kyla Rutland, City Farm SLO Associate Director, please provide a presentation on City Farm SLO?
Yes, good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. My name is Kayla Rutland and I'm the Associate Director for City Farm SLO. Thanks so much for this opportunity to provide our annual update on your local urban farm. So I'm going to start by sharing a short video on who we are and some of our recent work. Oh, 1 minute.
City Farm SLO is many, many things. It's been around for 7 years now in practice, about 11 years in concept. It's a 19-acre parcel of prime agricultural land in the middle of the city of San Luis Obispo, right along the Highway 101 freeway.
We are doing farming, we're doing education, and we're inviting the community out here to enjoy the land.
The first mission is to make this very valuable piece of property that's been put in agricultural reserve by the city many years ago to make it as productive as possible. 16 of the 19 acres are subleased to small independent farmers.
I want to learn new techniques, organic. That's what I want to do.
They're all using really good sustainable practices, and it's intended to be a demonstration for best practices, sustainable practices in agriculture.
We've embarked on a very deliberate program of using agricultural methods that are known as regenerative agriculture. It's based on recognizing that agricultural production is really working with what people call the biology in the soil, the tremendous fund of life that exists in soil, which is responsible for producing food.
I bit into the tomato and I'm like, okay, this is just like home. No pesticides, a little bit of dirt, and the taste.
Yeah, you can taste the nutrition, you can taste the minerals in the soil.
Healthy soils. That's why I spend a lot of time making fancy compost and trying to make some compost extract. And it's different layers, so there's wood chips and here's some zucchini down here. Seems to be working, so I'm pretty happy about it.
It's all about building the kind of future we want. So we're building it from the ground up, literally from the soil on up.
It feels great knowing that we can grow nutrition and health for our community. They can come to the farm, pick up a farm box.
Hi, you want it up here?
We distribute food to the needy. That's always been a goal for me in my life, is to feed the hungry, and we get to do that here.
As part of our agreement, our 20-year lease with the city is to provide educational programs.
Students are coming here and learning how to grow food, harvest food, and cook their own food.
It works with Pacific Beach School, and the kids at the high school there get to work on it as well and learn things.
Well, the kids that have been coming out for years, they seem to know their jobs and they've grown with it. And then we have some new students that are learning about, pest control and roosters and the chickens and what they do, their part.
A lot of exuberance to be able to get out here, to be able to pick carrots and plant potatoes, play with the chickens, gather the eggs.
To see that happening is just really inspiring.
The educational programs grew tremendously. So community engagement is an objective and a mission that we've kind of made up on our own. One is monthly work parties on Saturdays. We call them parties because they have a party aspect, and there's always something to harvest and take home.
We have family fun on Fridays. We have summer camps, after-school programs.
Well, I love the fact that it's so convenient. It truly is an urban farm. And I had an opportunity to tour the farm, and it's really fabulous.
I think the future of this farm could be really, really big. There's a large potential to educate a lot more people on what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we can scale this up.
Part of our plan is to have small animal husbandry program for small livestock. You Pick Orchard, which is already in process of being undertaken and planted. We're now half built with a charming little tough shed barn, which is going to serve as a produce cooler.
When someone walks through the gate and just is blown away, like maybe they were here 4 years ago or 3 years ago, and then they come and see it now. We've grown our growing space, and a lot of the trees have gotten bigger. It's really great to see the surprise and enjoyment on their faces.
Okay, and I'm just going to switch real quick to a few slides that share our 2020 updates. All right, so although last year brought many challenges and hardships, we at City Farm were fortunate to continue and expand many of our programs, engage with community members, and grow food when it was needed most. So in 2020, we welcomed 4 new tenant farmers, built a shared produce cooler, which allows flexibility in harvest. And prior to COVID-19 restrictions, we welcomed 40 classes of kindergarten through 6th grade students for field trips featuring lessons on ecology, biology, and nutrition, all aligned to their Common Core curriculum. Field trips were also adapted for distance learning, and these virtual materials have reached over 925 students across the county. Also, prior to COVID-19, our farm class partnership with Pacific Beach High School doubled its enrollment and added a farm enterprise component, and we look forward to reinstating and expanding these programs in the fall. Our weekly therapeutic horticulture program, in partnership with Prepare of San Luis Coastal, continued to meet throughout 2020 with the implementation of additional safety measures. We also piloted a farm-to-school partnership with San Luis Coastal School District to channel student-grown produce into school meals. We continued to model regenerative agriculture practices and introduced a soil health initiative that includes a new vermicomposting program, an aerobic digester, and no-till farming methods. Our animal husbandry programs have expanded to include a small herd of sheep, and the viability of these practices are evident in our yields. In 2020, we donated over 1,000 pounds of produce from just our 1/5 acre of educational gardens. And throughout 2020, we continued to welcome the community to the farm with socially distanced volunteer opportunities and the distribution of our CSA-style produce boxes in a student-led farm box program. And 2021 has brought even more growth and exciting progress. We've added a robust youth empowerment program that provides opportunities for teens of all backgrounds to build skills for healthy, successful futures. And we really look forward to expanding our other youth and community programs this year. We have so many more updates, so I invite you to learn more on our website, cityfarmslow.org. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of our work.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the great work that you're doing. And as you know, I've been there several times to do events, and I'd love to come back. I don't want to speak for the rest of my colleagues necessarily, but I'm guessing a lot of us would love to come and help support the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for that. And I see that Council Member or Vice Mayor Stewart has a question.
Thank you, Kayla. What a great presentation. And I'm just curious, how are the sheep doing? Have you started the whole animal process already?
The sheep are doing fantastic. They're actually a really unique heritage breed called Navajo Churros, and we are raising them in partnership with one of our tenants, Mariposa Education. They offer a Waldorf-style school programming on site. And so those students are taking care of the sheep, and they will be shearing them and then processing their wool for making textiles with. So they're doing great. Thanks for asking. Awesome. Yes, Councilmember Marks.
Yes, I would just like to say that this program is the result of decades of community support and a vision that first appeared in the 1994 land use element update. So it's really an outcome of the strong support for this kind of program and preservation of agricultural land that is now being realized. So it's something that we all should be proud of. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Marks, and please extend our gratitude to Dr. Marks for all of his hard work on this project. Yeah, thank you so much. Yay. All right. A little bright light in an otherwise dark sky this week, so thank you for that as well. All right, and now I would like to present a proclamation declaring the month of May as LGBTQ+ Pride Month to Michelle Call. I'm not sure, it sounds like Michelle may not be on the call tonight. I don't know if there's anyone here in her stead, but you can let us know if that's the case while I read the proclamation. Whereas LGBTQ+ Pride has been observed continuously since 1970 as a testament to the LGBTQ+ community's courage, persistence, resilience, and struggle for civil rights. And whereas San Luis Obispo strives to be a welcoming and inclusive city to people of all genders and sexualities, and whereas the city of San Luis Obispo recognizes the contribution of LGBTQ+ persons to the cultural, civic, and economic success of our city. And whereas this year commemorates the 25th anniversary of Pride in San Luis Obispo, now therefore I, Heidi Harmon, Mayor of the City of San Luis Obispo, on behalf of the entire City Council, hereby proclaim May 2021 as Pride Month and May 16th through the 23rd as Pride Week, and call upon the residents of San Luis Obispo to recognize and participate in these special observances with support and affirmation for our LGBTQ+ neighbors. City Clerk, is Michelle here? Did she, or anyone else for that matter, here to receive? I'm not seeing her on the
Yeah,
list.
I'm not seeing anyone either.
Okay, all right, well, I will accept on their behalf and remind everyone that Pride, I think some of us, especially those of us that are allies, see Pride at times as a big party, and it is, and it can be, and that's one of the things I love about it, but it's essentially a protest disguised as a party. And so just want to give a shout out to all the people that have worked so hard to move forward LGBTQ+ rights throughout the many years that that's taken to get there. So thank you to everyone on that. All right, now we will move on to public comment. This is for items that are not on the agenda. And I'd like to remind everyone, if you're here for public comment, so please raise your virtual hand and the city clerk will help facilitate you getting your chance to speak. And while we're doing that, I'd like to remind everyone of our civility guidelines. And they are to listen first. And so we will make an honest effort to understand views and reasonings of others by listening to understand, not listening to find fault, but allowing thoughtful discussion to lead the best possible outcomes. Respect different opinions. We will invite and consider different perspectives, allowing space for ideas to be expressed, opposed, and clarified in a constructive manner. Show courtesy. We will treat all colleagues, staff, and members of the public in a professional and courteous manner, whether in person, online, or in written communication, and especially when we disagree. Criticize constructively. We strive to advance solutions to community issues, and when faced with disagreement, we do more than simply share our concerns with differing positions. We work to purpose a course of action of mutual benefit. And last but certainly not least, debate the policy and not the person. We will focus on the issues and not personalize debate or use other tactics that divert attention from the issues. And speakers should direct their comments to the council, not the audience, not the staff, and should avoid personal attacks, abusive language, or other disruptive behavior. And so with that, City Clerk, do we have any speakers? I think I see some. I think I see Marshall James coming up first. Marshall.
All right, can you all hear me? Okay. Well, this has been a really event-heavy 2 weeks for our community. I want to give a shout out to City Farm SLO. I really appreciate their presentation, and I visited the City Farm a lot. I'm really glad that they are a part of our community, and so I'm really glad that they exist. Counselors, I've spoken before this council many times this past year, and in that time I've often advocated for divesting from policing and investing in other community resources. I want to be clear that myself and others who advocate such a position take no pleasure in learning of the death of a police officer. I'm a humanitarian and I'm opposed to violence, so I gain no joy when any member of our community is killed. It is my opposition to violence that actually drives me to advocate for divesting from police and investing in other more humane responses to the social ills that our community deals with. I had met Eddie Garon a few times last year, and his death too brings me no joy. In my few interactions with him, I had a sense that he was suffering mentally, and I felt bad that I had no way to help him. Who am I to call if I encounter someone undergoing a mental health crisis? I would not want to call 911 as statistics show that the largest determiner of whether someone will encounter a violent response from police is their mental health status. What Mr. Giron did was wrong, and I wish he had not done what he'd done. I wish he and the officer were still alive, and I wish he could get the mental health care that he needed. We have an opportunity to forge a new path here to prevent other tragedies like this from happening. Currently, our police take up over 30% of our operating budget for the city of SLO, and we could divest some of that into mental health care, into mental health care respondents, into more mental health care respondents. I feel like I recall earlier at previous meetings mentioning about how we have only 1 or 2 permanent mental health care workers that work for the city. It feels like we could have significantly more. I would love for there to be a line to call, something we could call, where the response will not be to send people with weapons to try and sort it out. I'm not saying that what the police did in any way provoked what happened, but I was at a loss anytime I encountered Eddie to know who I could turn to where I felt like he could be taken care of, where violence wouldn't have been created. So it's a tragedy. I really feel for the families of the officer, and I feel for all the members of our community right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you for that. Michael, please.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Michael Giuffre, and I use he, him pronouns. Yeah, I just want to start off by giving my deepest condolences to Detective Benedetti's family. And I'm keeping them in my thoughts and prayers during these times. As somebody who's lost a parent, I know how difficult these times are, and I'm just wishing the best for the kids. I thought there would be discussion over the city budget proposal today, but I totally understand why it's being pushed back to next meeting due to the loss of Detective Benedetti's life. But that being said, this may be my last city council meeting, and I would just like to bring awareness to some of the things that I'm passionate about, such as the Multicultural Center and the DEI budget. And so first off is on section 2.7D 14. I know it was talked about last meeting about Chang Park, the $300,000 being in the DEI budget. I would just really like to see that in the Parks and Rec budget, even if it means moving over that $300,000 from the DEI budget. I just don't believe Chang Park deserves to be in the DEI budget. Another one is 2.5 C and D, which talks about implementing police trainings and de-escalation. Again, I would like to see these funded by the SLO PD budget and not the DEI budget. And as Marshall said, the SLO PD budget makes up 30% of the city budget. And then also the last line item is 2.7F. I appreciate that our voices were heard last meeting and that the feasibility study budget was increased from 5,000 to 40,000. But I would just like to hear more about how this feasibility study will work. I'm just concerned that there will be a feasibility study and then the Multicultural Center will be forgotten about. After the feasibility study, what is the plan of action to actually get a Multicultural Center up and running? Is it going to have to wait till the 2023 to 2025 budget? So does that mean we're going to have to wait multiple years? I would just like to hear you touch on that. And again, my deepest condolences to Detective Benedetti's life or family. And yeah, thank you. And I hope you have a nice rest of your meeting.
Thank you so much. I'll just step in super quickly and let you know that we have a meeting this Friday morning of stakeholders around the Cultural Center and next steps. So we probably don't have any concrete answers for you other than that at this point on that particular item. Ellie, please.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Ellie Harlow. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm affiliated with Abolitionist Action Central Coast SLO. I don't want to take up too much time tonight. I just mainly want to emphasize what other folks have said, and that is the importance of divesting from police and investing in community care. As everyone has said so far, SLO PD's budget accounts for 30% of the city's operating expenses. Meanwhile, the people have been told that rent relief is not feasible. With the pandemic still going on, this year has been extremely difficult financially for so many people, and there's absolutely no need for almost 1/3 of the entire city's operating costs to go to policing, while we barely fund programs that actually promote community care and well-being. I urge you to defund SLO PD by at least $5 million and redirect that money to low-income and no-income housing. With $5 million, especially in conjunction with state funds, grants, or private donors, rent relief is actually very feasible. All right, thank you all for your time. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Ellie. Alejandro, please.
Good evening, City Council, members of the public. I continue to wish the best of health to everybody as we're still in an unprecedented pandemic. My name is Alejandro. I've been a SLO community member on and off for close to a decade now and continuously for the last half decade. And I'm also affiliated with Abolitionist Action Central Coast SLO. I wanted to start off by addressing something that's far away from the city of SLO, though at the same time inextricably linked to what is happening here. And that is the ongoing struggle and uprising for liberation against settler colonialism in Palestine. We know that this is not a religious issue, but rather an issue of being against ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and against settler colonialism all over the world. And we know as well that the thing that upholds inequality, both in occupied Palestine and right here in California on stolen Chumash land, is policing. We know that these things are connected, not just in terms of the actual connections of the IOF training of officers, but also in terms of what they represent. Now, some might say I'm callous for bringing this up at such a time. Some might say that I'm being cruel or insensitive, or that now is not the right time to talk about these issues. But I am commenting on this now tonight because I, along with many people in the community, genuinely wish to see no more deaths. And the way to see no more deaths in this community is not upholding a system that we need to be transitioning away from. This is not about individual officers. This is about policing itself and about our society's reliance on police to solve these types of crises. The council has already heard from one speaker about how a different road, a different situation, investment in other resources might have stopped this whole tragic situation from happening. I urge the council and I urge the public to take these matters seriously and to take the need seriously to invest in things that will actually make sure that we see no more deaths. Again, nobody wants to see more of these types of deaths, and nobody wants to see more families hurting like that. But the way to do that is not to invest in things that have failed before, but to chart a new path forward for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am not seeing any further speakers. City Clerk, are you seeing any?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
yeah.
if I could just provide some information for the council and for the speakers. I just want to remind the community that our partner Transitions Mental Health Services does operate a Central Coast hotline. It's confidential, it's free, it's 24/7. We will push out again on our social media tiles, because we get this question a lot, is what are the alternatives when someone is having family, mental health, substance issues? What are the alternatives to calling the police department? Sometimes it's certainly appropriate to call the police department, and other times it's appropriate to reach out to mental health professionals. And TIMA has put out some information in the past that can help guide you, your family, and the people that you love to the types of services that they need. I just want to emphasize how much that there again, those services in the state of California are provided by the county and other nonprofit partners. The Behavioral Health Department at the county, which has a vast array of services ranging from drug and alcohol to mental health for adult and youth and justice services and patients' rights and prevention outreach, et cetera. They also have a number to phone as well with an online tool to help guide you to the right program should you need them. I'm certainly happy to make sure we continue to push out that information more and more and make that accessible, those services that both the county and our nonprofit partners are providing. As the mayor pointed out, we are meeting on Friday with some parties that are interested in advancing the Multicultural Center and look forward to those conversations. I shared with the council this last week some of I would say, and agree with the governor's characterization that it is a once in a generation opportunity with some of the funding that's coming from the state. And I'll just highlight one area I think that really brings some promise and I think is going to require, and we'll be talking about some of this tonight as part of our legislative platform as it relates to both housing and homelessness, is the governor has put in place the recommendation with the legislature for $12 billion in funding for both housing and homelessness. And so this is unprecedented levels of funding that we've never seen in my 30-year career in public service. So that, and there's a host of other programming that's going to be available for mental health and alcohol and drug services. And so we are going to be continuing our conversations with the county. I was just actually working on logistics earlier today to have our second meeting with city managers and our county administrator to talk about not only the next steps for advancing services for our homeless community, but also at the same time, how are we preparing ourselves and what is the readiness that we need to put in place as a city and county to take advantage of the state. And I can imagine, just given the conversations in DC, some of the federal funding that may come down as well. So I just wanted to offer that information to the council and the community tonight. And thank you for raising these issues.
And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the respectfulness of folks that have consistently advocated for around issues around policing that are here again tonight, and the respectfulness that was shared. It means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to everyone. So yes, thank you so much for that. That's very much appreciated. So thank you for that. Vice Mayor, I saw your hand up, but now I don't. So did you want to speak?
I just wanted to say, there's a lot of numbers that city manager just threw out and phone numbers, and you can just call 211 and get to all of those phone numbers. And I know that the Downtown Association, the ambassadors, they carry these little business cards that have the 211 with little information. And yes, I am partial because I used to be part of United Way, but there, all things been told. But knowing that there's well over 800 nonprofit, I think it's actually almost 1,000 now, nonprofits and governmental agencies that can help with all of these things that we're talking about and get you to the rent relief, get you to the mental health, get you to food bank, etc. So I just really want to encourage people to write that down, put that in their phone number, their phone contacts, and just remember 211 can get you to all of those numbers.
And also maybe I'll just add, having dealt firsthand with family members in deep mental health crises and not finding any services, not to the fault of the city of San Luis Obispo, but it's a much broader, deeper issue than the city can address. So I'd also encourage folks to continue to advocate at the state level as well, which is where we actually really need more resources and more legislation and other things to get folks that are in deep crises the help that they so desperately need. So thank you for bringing that up, community. All right. And then with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. This is for items that are deemed to be non-controversial. If you're here to speak on any items on consent, please raise your hand. If you are here as a representative of an organization or a business, it is incumbent upon you to disclose that. And please remember the civility guidelines that I previously mentioned. I'd like to see if my colleagues would like to pull any items. I would like to pull item 16 for discussion, and perhaps we can make a motion to pass the rest unless someone else would like to pull an additional item. Okay, seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to pass the rest of consent?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, great. City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen.
Yes.
Councilmember Pease.
Yes.
Councilmember Marks. Mayor Harmon.
Yes, and I believe that's 5-0. I did not hear Councilmember Marks, but I assume that was a yes. Okay. All right.
Second. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Jan. All right. So the item 16 is the agreement with REACH and the council liaison assignment with REACH. I just wanted to pull it for a little bit further discussion. First of all, wanted to start by saying thank you to all the folks that are on the board of REACH that have worked so hard on this. I feel really grateful to have you as a regional partner and really leading a really deeply meaningful effort on economic, hopefully reimagining as opposed to recovering, honestly. And so just wanted to start by saying that I really appreciate that. And there's so much goodness here and it's exciting. And I'm grateful to see the future of San Luis Obispo, hopefully, and working here especially be lifted up, folks to be lifted up. And there are just two aspects that I wanted to bring up. One is equity. And maybe I'm missing it. So I'm assuming there's some folks here. I see Ty, I think he's here. I'm not sure if Melissa's here or others or Andrew. But I wanted to, yes, I see Melissa. I see language around, I hear you that we want folks making, 50,000 or more, and there's like implicit equity sort of in some of the language of the document. And it also strikes me as something that we have a lot of work to do on. And having talked to a lot of folks, CEOs especially when it comes to innovation technology, which this REACH document and vision is so rich with those kind of ideas. Our lack of diversity in this county, and I'm guessing in the region at large, but certainly in the county of San Luis Obispo, is a huge limiter to our ability to expand as a innovation tech hub, not to mention the moral and ethical call that I think most of us hopefully are feeling around this issue. And so I just wanted to hear more about that and hope that that could be more explicit. For example, I think one of the things we're going to be doing as a city organization, and then it seems like it would be a good fit for REACH, would be to focus on creating and developing minority-owned businesses in our region. For example, would there possibly be initiatives that would be more specific around those types of things? So wanted to just, I'm curious about that. And if there's not more that REACH could do explicitly around lifting that issue up. And then secondly, I know everyone's excited about, or a lot of people are excited about space, and I get it. It's very exciting for some, and I get that. And I do feel that discomfort with this region being described as essentially from one military base to another. And I understand that space has evolved into all kinds of things that are in the more commercial realm, and that's seems cohesive with the general sort of approach that the city of San Luis Obispo takes. But I also want to remind the council and the community that we have divested as a city organization from the military industrial complex. Our investment policy explicitly names that we do not invest in aerospace or defense. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that. I know the city manager and I have talked about it. So Derek, I don't know if you wanted to flesh that out a little bit. I know we received some email communication about that. And I recognize there's a lot more here than that, but that does seem to be a pretty significant focus. So maybe we can ask Melissa to speak to those two issues to hear a little bit more about that.
So,
Yeah, I don't
so Madam Mayor, just to start off, first, thank you for the questions. I just draw the council's attention. I mean, there's a lot of information in the packet. The essence of the work that REACH is going to be taking on behalf of the city is really embodied on packet page 140 and packet page 141, and then all the way to 142. That's really the essence of the scope of work. Just to go way back, this why we're here is because way back when we made our budget for the supplemental budget, we specifically called out a partnership with REACH as a needed and identified partner for our region to advance regional economic assistance and focus. And at that time, conversations were still underway with the planned potential merger between REACH and the EBC. And of course, those conversations evolved, and that has since happened. So the scope of work really intends to capitalize on areas that are consistent with our economic development strategic plan, which we had hoped to update last year, but obviously COVID interrupted that. So we never completed that task. It is a task moving forward. And so the work and the discussions really goes back to, I would say, last year, there have been a lot of starts and stops with our conversation with REACH, mainly on our side, because we've really had to focus on a variety of economic programs to help our struggling businesses through COVID-19. I'll turn it over to Greg and Lee, and then certainly I've asked Melissa to jump over to answer any questions, but Greg and Lee, perhaps you can give some more insight of the intent of the scope of work, what are the outcomes we're going to achieve, and then perhaps some of the questions that the mayor has raised, it's opportunities for us to make perhaps any scope of work adjustments in the contract that's before the council tonight.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Happy to be here tonight. So thank you for the questions. Derek's accurate. So the specific scope of services that the city is paying for, and that's really around regional economic development support, is articulated on page 140. And I think that it's important to note that our approach to economic development is sort of the funnel approach. And so the idea is that we work with different entities at different layers. And so we at the local level in a lot of ways are at the bottom of that funnel. Then as we move up the layer, there's regional entities, statewide entities, and then national entities. And ultimately what we do is we work to take advantage of the opportunities, data, information, resources that those groups have to help us ultimately better inform local development at the city level. And so that's the intent, and that is the goal of the partnership with REACH, is to take advantage of the programs and services that they have available to us to further the goals that we have. In particular, there's a major city goal work plan task as a part of their economic recovery and resiliency and fiscal sustainability, major city goal specific to support of minority-owned businesses and diversity, equity, inclusion, along with sustainability. One of the ways that we will accomplish that is through using the tools and resources that are available to us through the partnership through REACH. And I would ask Lee if there's anything that he might want to add, and then Melissa in terms of the overall focus of REACH and where there's additional areas of alignment.
Lee Johnson here, Economic Development Manager, Mayor and Council. Nothing additional to add. I think it's really critical to speak to the scope of work on page 140 is related to the things that we need as a city, as it relates to Diablo Canyon, as access to data, information that we just can't get or afford by ourselves. So the partnership with REACH really leverages the broader community to get together, for example, on the data site that REACH has put together. We've been trying to get data like that for at least 10 years. Now we have some of the latest and greatest data that we actually spent the morning today on how to bring that into our website and make it available to those businesses who want to come to the city of San Luis Obispo. That's all that I would add.
And I think I can jump in here if that's okay. Madam Mayor, members of the council, thanks for allowing me to be here with you and speak today. It's always great to see all of you. Appreciate the dialogue and the discussion. I think economic recovery is an important topic of discussion for our communities and for the city of San Luis Obispo. I would just kind of echo some of the things that we've heard from Derek and Lee and Greg as far as what the role of REACH is in partnership with the city. I think it's really important to consider that the role of REACH isn't the end-all be-all complete economic development package for the city of SLO. We are an important partner in a larger ecosystem, which includes, your economic development efforts within the city. There's you have different types of partnerships with the SLO Chamber and the Downtown Association, and there's a whole kind of group of organizations that are coming together to promote and support the goals and objectives that you have as a local jurisdiction within the larger region. And where REACH really plays is at kind of the regional level and looking at some of the bigger kind of picture issues that affect all of the communities across the Central Coast. So, and I think the other thing I would note, and it came up in your question, Mayor Harmon, was around the way that we communicate the region. I think you're correct. And the early days when before we were called REACH, and it was just an early concept called the Hourglass Project, we did communicate it as Vandenberg to Camp Roberts. That has not been a way that we've communicated for the last many months, years. We talk about it as being a regional kind of 2-county effort within SLO and Santa Barbara counties. And we're looking at, a broad portfolio of initiatives to support the region moving forward. So I would say, as it concerns the city of SLO and the scope that we've worked with you all on, it drills down into the things that you've heard from Lee and Greg and Derek today that are very, very specific in providing certain types of data that you don't have at this state that you can utilize for the types of attraction that you may want to have in your city. At the larger part of the funnel, we at REACH are working with different types of statewide entities. So as an example, just to kind of help get a picture of the funnel, we have a very strong strategic partnership with GoBiz, who's the governor's economic development arm. They get different types of inquiries and they put out RFIs for different types of companies that want to locate. We've talked with all different types of companies and look at, earlier this week, we were talking to a desalination company. We've talked with tech companies, lots of different types of companies that want to locate on the Central Coast. Another scenario might be an existing company that might want to expand. What you all have the opportunity to do is say, this is our vision for the city. This is where we see kind of the growth and economic opportunity, and we can plug into and work with REACH to see the expansion of those types of businesses, that type of talent in our community. So that's an important way that you can kind of picture how the funnel works. And then there's some of the perspectives around kind of diversity and inclusion and how that plays out in our economic recovery. That's absolutely a very important element, a lens in which all of this work takes place in. And I would say that it's not a specific initiative in which we're contracted with the city for, that doesn't take away from the priority that it has and the way that the city is advancing those goals. But I would say that it's an underpinning of all of our work as we're trying to collectively raise the standard of living, lift people up out of poverty, create economic opportunity and jobs and affordable housing for more people to live and work and raise their family on the Central Coast. I think that there is absolutely a layer in that perspective. And I would say, as you kind of look at our kind of strategic priorities 3 and 4 in our plan, looking at breaking down barriers to job creation, preparing residents for jobs of the future as you're thinking about how that gets implemented in job training and skills development and things like that. There's absolutely many opportunities for the way in which that gets implemented into the future. But I would say, just to wrap, the very specific tactical things that the city needs, I think that are more focused on the data, the connection in with the support of business at kind of the regional level. And then I would say kind of more broadly, some of the big picture regional initiatives, such as the reuse and decommissioning of Diablo Canyon, and some of the opportunities around industries such as clean tech, as we're looking at moving from being an energy generating community within the nuclear industry and into thinking about what our renewable future would be. And that those have been some very important discussions that we've been leading recently in partnership with Senator Laird, Assemblyman Cunningham, the MOU group we brought together to be looking at the future reuse of Diablo. So I know that those are some types of the an example of the regional initiatives in which the city would be a partner in through this scope of work.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And again, thank you so much for all of your hard work. I just want to make it clear that I very much appreciate it. I just wanted to lift up these two concerns. And I did not, I had not noticed, and so maybe that's on me, that there had been a sort of re-messaging around that. So I appreciate that, because it, you know, I didn't necessarily want to start being known as, like from military base to military base. That's what San Luis
Yeah,
Obispo
no, we talk about it as the Central Coast.
is all about.
Best kept
So-
secret in the world.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Councilmember Pease.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing up these important concerns, and to our staff and to Melissa for being able to address them. So I have a couple of questions, or two. The first will be kind of the REACH relationship and understanding of how to coordinate with the Economic Recovery Initiative of the Central Coast that has kind of a lot of the, seems to kind of fill in some of the potential gaps in what REACH is focused on. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit more. And then also just to, I'm supportive. I think this is important work, and I trust our staff and our vision. And I do feel like the actual language isn't in the contract. So if we look specifically on page 140 of the packet, the very first one, strategic priority 1, accelerate job growth in target industries. And then when you go up and you see what are the target industries, it says target industries such as aerospace, defense, agri-tech, technology, energy, clean tech. So a lot of that aligns, and I'm just wondering if if staff thinks, if folks think this would be effective or helpful, accelerate job growth in target industries that align with the City of San Luis Obispo strategic economic development or vision, the city's vision, something that kind of spells out like this is how we want to be. So I guess those are my two. One is just about the Economic Recovery Initiative, and the other is, could we find some language to clarify our vision? And I know it's messy, right? I mean, a drone is a horrible weapon and a lifesaver for delivering food. So it's not like there's a clear-cut line, but I just think that there's a way to communicate that intent within the document.
So go ahead, Greg.
Oh, sure. Let me start off, and then please feel free to jump in, Melissa. So a couple things. One, I think we can certainly make that adjustment to the proposal and scope of work from REACH to clarify the first item on page 140. And I think the recommended language of accelerating job growth in target industries as aligned with city goals and objectives would be helpful for us. And just so everyone's clear, the points of reference that we would draw upon would be our economic development strategic plan and current major city goals to find those points of alignment. And Melissa, do you want to take the second item?
Sure. So I think, it's probably important to share just for a moment about the way in which REACH operates as a regional economic impact organization. We don't do our work by staffing up with, a whole, army of people to do this work. We do it by building network capacity and working with partners and local governments and nonprofits and education and in business. That is the way in which we do our work. It's a network capacity model. So we work with all different types of organizations. We have chambers of commerce, we have trade industry associations. So as it concerns ERI, we see them as another community partner, and we work with many, many community partners. So they're one of many. And of course we have and will continue to work with our community partners.
Great, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'd be happy to move the approval of the contract with the modification as Greg noted.
Second, and I appreciate.
Oh, I beat you.
Okay, I just wanted to say I do appreciate the mayor and Councilmember Pease bringing those issues up, because if you hadn't, I would have, and so you saved me the effort. Thank you, and thanks Melissa for being here to flesh out some of the other answers. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, City Clerk?
Councilmember Pease,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stewart,
Yes.
Mayor Harmon.
Yes, and I hope that we're all one step closer to getting Ty on a rocket ship one day, which I know he would love. And I know also, so that passes 5-0. Normally we wait till 8 o'clock to take our break, but currently we are going to be taking more but shorter breaks. So it is 7:20. So we will take a 5-minute break and be back at 7:25 for our next item. All right, welcome back, everyone. I think we're all here. Okay, great. Now we have a public hearing before us to introduce an ordinance to amend the airport area and Margarita area specific plans to allow for daycare facilities. And so would Community Development Director Michael Codron and Associate Planner Rachel Cohen please present the report.
Thank you, Mayor Harmon, and good evening, members of the City Council. Rachel's going to go ahead and give you the presentation. It's a recommendation from the Planning Commission and a recommendation to allow daycare facilities in more parts of the city, which is a direction that we received from the City Council, and funding was provided for us to pursue this work. And I just wanted to highlight, and Rachel will cover this in her presentation as well, but the long-awaited update to the airport land use plan is expected to occur next week, which will really simplify the implementation of this project going forward. So we realized that the recommendation had to take into account the fact that the airport land use plan might not be updated. It's a little bit complicated in how it's recommended, but going forward, it'll actually be much simplified because that update is expected to happen next week. So we're happy about that. I wanted to just take the moment to note that because it's relevant to this item. And with that, I'll ask Rachel to go ahead and give the presentation.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, Madam Mayor and fellow council members. As Michael indicated, we're going to be going over the proposed amendments to the airport area and the Margarita area specific plans to allow daycare facilities. Staff is recommending the council introduce an ordinance to amend the airport area and the Margarita area specific plans to allow daycare facilities consistent with the restrictions that apply citywide under the city's municipal code. In 2018, the city updated its zoning regulations to allow daycare facilities in all zones. However, that amendment did not extend to the Margarita area or the airport area. And currently, these specific plans either limit or prohibit daycare facilities. In October of 2020, the city authorized the Community Development Department to undertake the necessary specific plan amendments to align the zoning in the Margarita area and the airport area with the rest of the city. This slide shows the portions of the city that fall under the Margarita area specific plan and the airport area specific plan. As Michael mentioned, in April, the Planning Commission reviewed the proposed amendments and is recommending the council approve the amendments as they're recommended in the draft ordinance. The Airport Land Use Commission also reviewed the proposed amendments and determined that they were consistent with the Airport Land Use Plan. The proposed amendments are consistent with various city and regional policies, programs, goals, and studies. In the fall of 2019, the City Council approved a contribution to fund a county-wide child care study that facilitated by First Five with the support of other local agencies. Initial significant findings of the Phase 1 report identify that there is a lack of affordable and available childcare to support the community of San Luis Obispo. The study is currently under review by first five, and council will receive a full presentation on the study once it's complete. Additionally, City Council has emphasized the importance of expanding childcare opportunities as an integral part in supporting the community through adding that to the 2021-2023 major city goals for economic recovery, resiliency, and sustainability. The city's municipal code breaks daycare facilities into sort of two groups. We have our family daycare, and those are facilities that are located within a residence, and daycare centers, which are a separate, often commercial facility. And then based on the type, the size, location, these different daycare facilities are either allowed by right or require a discretionary approval. Large daycares, for example, large family daycares are allowed within residential units and require approval from the director, whereas small daycare facilities do not require discretionary approval. Daycare centers are allowed by right in many commercial and office zones. A minor use permit is required for daycare centers that are located within residential, downtown commercial, tourist commercial, service commercial, manufacturing, and business park zones. Currently, the Margarita Area Specific Plan prohibits daycare centers and does not have clear standards for family daycares. The Airport Area Specific Plan does allow daycare centers only if they have no more than 14 children on site, and those are only the children of employees working as a part of a business that daycare is associated with. And family daycare is not addressed in the Airport Area Specific Plan. So the amendments of the Margarita Area Specific Plan include minor text changes in the residential zone descriptions to allow family daycare and daycare centers. It eliminates language prohibiting daycare centers in the various commercial and business park zones. Additionally, the discussion on airport compatibility has been updated to be consistent with Airport Land Use Plan. The land use table 4-3 in the Airport Area Specific Plan has been amended to allow daycare centers within the commercial and business park zones and family daycare within the residential zones. The airport, San Luis Obispo County Airport Land Use Plan regulates safety and noise related issues for development within the airport's area of influence. And the Airport Land Use Commission, as Michael mentioned, is currently reviewing a draft amended and restated airport land use plan that will be adopted next week. As such, the amendments of the Margarita Area and the Airport Area Specific Plans have been structured to comply with both of those plans. And so this map here, for instance, is the current Airport Land Use Plan's safety areas. And with their the amendments, it would be that childcare and daycare facilities would be allowed within the S2 safety zones, which is the yellow areas on this map. And then with the updated plan, the childcare facilities would be allowed within Zone 6, which is this purple outlined area and all this, basically this empty space here. The project is exempt per CEQA guidelines 15061 subsection B3, the general rule exemption. The proposed amendments will have no possibility of a significant effect on the environment and will not cause impacts beyond those identified and evaluated within the EIRs that were a part of the Airport Area Specific Plan and the Margarita Area Specific Plan. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for any questions or clarifications the council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I just wanted to add one thing, which for members of the council that are looking at those maps or members of the public, the differences between those two maps are actually pretty substantial in terms of when the new plan goes into effect under that second map. It will allow the daycare centers and in a much larger portion of the city than currently permitted. So that's something that we're certainly looking forward to, are the reduced restrictions to land use associated with the updated airport land use plan. So it may not be immediately obvious, but the difference between these two plans is that the effect of the airport is much less. And with that concludes the presentation, and we'll take any questions that the council may have.
Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled to see more childcare coming, and I know that the folks in this area have been working so hard, not only to grow their business, but to grow it in a way that supports not only their workers, but as many other folks from our community as possible in terms of childcare. And we know now more than ever how important childcare is. So grateful to see that shift. I am not seeing any of my colleagues with hands up. I am seeing someone from the community, however. So we'll go to public comments on this item. I see Roy Ogden, please. Roy, if you happen to be speaking, just so you know, we can't hear you. So sometimes it takes a moment, though, for the stars to align.
Thank you very much. I am Roy Ogden. For those of you who don't know me, I've been practicing law in this wonderful city of San Luis Obispo for over 30 years. And I'm here to talk briefly about Trust Children's Center, a particular daycare center that I'm particularly interested in, and it is going to be affected by this legislation. And the purpose of tonight is just to give you some information about the situation, because I know that I'm confident that we will be talking to you about Trust Children's Center in the future. Trust Children's Center is off of Suburban, and it's on Earthwood, which is, I think it's 4085 Earthwood. And this Trust Children's Center was approved for 3 years with the possibility of having an additional year. And the conditions of approval allowed it to operate for 3 + 1 years, but it's operated for over 6. Conditions of approval required it to be an accessory daycare to Trust Automation's plant next door. And it makes sense that large manufacturing facilities such as Trust Automation that had a daycare need would be able to operate one as an adjunct facility in next door. But Trust moved out over 2 years ago, and this facility's been operating illegally. And this facility claimed it was going to be moving back to Trust. I understand that building plans were submitted, but it's my concern now that this legislation will legalize that illegal operation, and Trust will apply to simply stay in its current location. And when that happens, I want to remind you of tonight when I bothered you about this and let you know maybe an inadvertent result of this legislation, which is great legislation. It's needed, but I think it paints a bit of a broad brush and allows potentially this daycare facility to remain across the street from a brew pub in a cannabis zone. And there are lots of reasons why it's an inappropriate use But I would not be here if this legislation wouldn't change the operation from illegal to legal. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ty Sofrino.
Council members, Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for being here. This legislation, I'm delighted that this is finally coming to fruition. It's been a long journey. As you guys know, I'm the CEO and founder of Trust Automation. Under Trust Automation, we have the Trust Children's Center, which Mr. Ogden was just speaking of. I won't go into the details on that, and I'm sure there'll be times in the future where we can discuss that, but there are many things about his statements which are probably correct from his perspective and what he's been given. But if you look at what the rent we pay and things of other natures in that facility, it's been a different story. The main part of this is childcare is needed, and it's very difficult currently with the restrictions we have to support what's needed in the future advancement of what you look what Breach is doing, and in particular when you look in the manufacturing zones and the advanced manufacturing that is primarily a component of the San Luis Obispo area. And in the advanced manufacturing area, which we're pivoting to because of some of the areas we can do the higher value jobs and bring prosperity, that comes with the need to be able to address the very real aspect of what does our younger population do with their kids. And the affordability of this is hard, but when coupled with businesses such as ourselves, we're able to compensate heavily for that childcare, provide world-class childcare, and actually give the parents the peace of mind that right next door is where their kids are, where they're being taken care of, and they have this intimate connection to it. And we believe, and I think the community's response to what we do has been one where they believe that we're doing it the right way, and we wish to continue those efforts. And this change allows us to continue those efforts in the new facility as we finish up our permitting and go through the new facility that'll be there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I am not seeing any other hands. City Clerk, do you see any other hands for speakers?
No, I do not.
Okay. Great. Would any of my colleagues, Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for working on this. We always are asking you to help provide ways to get more childcare, and this is definitely one of them. So thank you for all of your hard work.
Councilmember Marks.
Yes, I really support this. I think it's wonderful, and I just want to acknowledge the hard work that Councilmember Christensen has done, bird dogging the Airport Land Use Commission. I mean, she and I were in it together until I left council in 2016, and that was at least 4 or 5 years. And I know Councilmember Christensen has continued to bird dog the commission and make it more amenable to the kinds of programs that and projects that our city really needs to fully realize its potential, including this child care. I would like staff to, or someone to clarify the Trust Children's Center issue, or perhaps handle it later and send us a memo, because right now I don't understand it. So thank you.
We'd be happy to update the council as we look into that issue.
Thank you, Michael. Councilmember Christensen.
Yeah, I do think that the issue raised by our public comment is relatively irrelevant to our vote tonight. It's a completely separate issue, and I'm sure we'll hear about it from staff as we need to. And I appreciate your remarks, Councilmember Marks. Not only during my years on the council, when I was heavily involved at first, but also my years at the Planning Commission, city, and especially the county. When the Airport Land Use Commission basically put a complete block on pretty much anything happening anywhere near the airport, like literally anywhere near the airport, like most of the city. So times have gotten more modern. We have a new Airport Land Use Commission. We've had a fantastic staff effort. And I think that the basic change that's happened is the Airport Land Use Commission has recognized that, yes, you don't build child care centers and other types of buildings underneath flight paths, but that you cannot ban things like child care centers just because it happens to be around where it's going to be noisy. It's the noise versus safety issue that seemed to be very difficult for many years, but that's been clarified, and we, through council's authorization and staff's hard work and our child care people hard work, I think we're really making some progress, because we know we have lots and lots of families moving into this area. So it'll be really great to have expanded the ability to put childcare in there. And with that, I would like to go ahead and move staff recommendation. And thanks for all the great work.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. City Clerk?
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Pease,
Yes.
Mayor Harmon.
Yes, yes, wonderful. So excited to see that happen. Thank you to everyone that worked on that. All right, now we will move on to establish the 2021 legislative platform. So would City Attorney Christine Dietrich please present the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, and with the assistance of our City Clerk running our slideshow here, I will begin. As you are well aware, this is an annual item that we bring forward for the Council. The purpose is to designate the Mayor, the City Manager, and I as the legislative liaisons for the city, and for the Council to establish a platform that allows us as city representatives on behalf of the city as a whole to weigh in on items of legislation that come forward in a way that's more timely and efficient than we would otherwise be able to do. The platform has become quite robust over the years, and I think we have very good coverage throughout a broad spectrum of issues that are important to the city. We try to align the platform with the city's major city goals and the council objectives and policy directions that the council's provided us over the prior year. And we ask each of the departments to weigh in on their particular subject matter areas and review the platform for relevancy and also for content that needs to be added or removed from the platform in order for us to be able to efficiently respond to those legislative items that are more and more rapidly emerging in our current environment. And so with that, I'll ask Teresa to move to the next slide. What we have this year is we've put on an attractive cover page. So we've made some general aesthetic and organizational improvements. We've added a table of contents because, as I said, the platform has become significant enough where we felt it would be helpful. We got some council feedback that it would be helpful to have a little bit of a guide to get you more quickly to where you want to go when you have questions about whether or not the city has within its platform the authorization to respond on a particular item that perhaps council members are being contacted about advocating on. And then we've just cleaned up some grammar, syntax, and format refinements, and then made some substantive additions that we'll run through quickly here. Next slide, please, Teresa. And so we made some changes to our climate action section. We added supporting funding and resources to focus climate investments on programs and projects that support environmental justice, economic and racial equity, and head of household jobs, obviously to align with the council's DEI objectives, major city goal, and also the city's economic development and, as the mayor said, reimagining objectives. We've added supporting reform of CPUC policies and state legislation that supports equitable access to distributed energy resources, again, attempting to align our advocacy with our major city goal and policy objectives. Next slide. We've also added supporting extended producer responsibility for packaging and single-use product manufacturing, as to encourage source reduction in the manufacturing of reusable and sustainable products. So very much aligned with our solid waste management practices and the city's attempts to reduce waste overall, and put those obligations not only with the city in the center, but as a manufacturer supported effort as well. Supporting measures that make waste diversion and reduction more equitable for our residents and businesses. We recognize that there's a balance and that has to be accessible and manageable for the businesses that are responsible for that waste diversion. And supporting legislation that makes edible food recovery and distribution more easily accessible to residents and businesses in need. And the asterisk there at the bottom is just to indicate that we did discover we have lots of cooks in the kitchen, as I noted in developing the platform. And we did note as we were preparing the slides that these were not noted as additions. So we wanted to highlight that for the council because it didn't appear clearly in the red line that was provided to the council. Next slide, please. And then we've also done some reorganization and some additions to our homelessness resources advocacy provisions. We've added supporting legislation for unified crisis response systems and enhancement of the ability of county behavioral health director to compel assisted outpatient treatment for a person exiting conservatorship. That's based on some feedback that we got from our county partners and identifying some gaps in the spectrum of services that are available to people and trying to fill some of the gaps that I think we heard from some speakers about earlier. And some of those areas where people just feel like they don't have the support in the community that they need for mental health services. We've also added supporting legislation that would allow the courts to consider a person's medical condition or expand the definition of gravely disabled and consider the impact on a court's decision to certify them as a danger to themselves or others. Many of you are familiar with the 5150 provisions, which is the evaluation and treatment and involuntary evaluation for people who are a threat to themselves or others who are gravely disabled. There is a great deal of frustration, and we are certainly all acutely aware of that in our community at this moment in time, that there are people who many folks have concerns about that simply do not meet those qualifications to be taken into a protective environment and evaluated and provided with the medical care they need. So that is to address that particular gap in services that is often something that confronts our police officers in the field when they are called out on those kinds of calls. Next slide. We've also added supporting legislation to the Mental Health Services Act to allow for flexibility in funds earmarked for innovation programs that are aimed at finding new and different ways to provide services. So this is, a little bit of advocacy against doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think that on many fronts, we have realized that we see gaps all the time. We understand people in our community do, and we want to sort of expand the way that we look at what the spectrum of services available for mental health services support might be. We have moved from the county and regional priorities. Previously in our platform, we had a great deal of emphasis in the county and regional priorities, placing our homeless advocacy in that space. With the council's policy direction and major city goals, we have moved from the county and regional priorities in order to consolidate all of the issues that surround homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse treatment into that one section so that they're more clearly and cohesively presented in the platform. And that is supporting legislation and other policy considerations to expand funding for the delivery of case management, drug, alcohol, and detoxification services, as well as mental health services for all county residents, and the establishment of shelter facilities for the unhoused. Next slide. Also moved from the county and regional priorities is advocating that the county lead in the area of expanding humane shelter opportunities for the unhoused population and expand outreach and case management services specifically tailored to the needs of homeless individuals in the county. supporting the use of data from city and regional community action teams and mobile crisis units, to advocate that the county allocate new resources to scale up these programs to match the need. We want to really encourage the fluid sharing of information that encourages those regional collaborations and allows us all to be working on good information that helps us best identify solutions. We've also moved from the county and regional priorities, supporting an effective and efficient update of the 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness, and doing that in a way that is action-oriented and focused on measurable, positive, and realistic outcomes. Next slide. Changes in community development. We have removed the reference to the 2020 census, which is now completed, and we await the final outcomes of that effort. So that was no longer relevant to the platform this year. Next slide. And in public safety, we've removed supporting the Keeping California Safe Act legislative efforts to address a variety of alignment and other issues. That was specifically in reference to a proposition that did not receive voter approval in the last election. And so we're removing that reference from the platform for that reason. And also, I want to note, with the removal of that, there is a great deal of effort with which the city aligns at the Cal Cities or League of California Cities level to address the impacts of realignment and reclassification of a variety of violations that have had impacts in very clear ways in local communities and in local jails as opposed to prison systems. Next slide. Changes in finance. We've removed supporting fair tax allocations on catalog and internet sales, not because we don't want that, but because there was a decision that has accomplished that objective for us. So we are no longer having to allocate in that manner. We are in fact receiving those revenues pursuant to the Wayfair case. Next. And in transportation, we've added supporting funding strategies to reduce the personal cost of transportation, especially cargo and electric assist bicycles and their supporting infrastructure. We've added proposed changes to statistical methodologies, such as the metropolitan statistical areas, that have the potential to reduce funding for transportation improvements. And I will concede that if you need a lot more detail on that, I will have to phone one of our friends in our staff support areas there. Added supporting improvements of state and federal standards guiding application of street design and traffic control devices to allow more flexibility for local agencies to prioritize safety, particularly for vulnerable road users, consistent with recent calls to action from groups such as the National Transportation Safety Board, NACTO, and others. So we would not be out of alignment with the experts in these fields, but we would look for greater local flexibility to address safety issues in our community. Next slide. And in utilities, added supporting federal and state funding that would allow for transfer of Salinas Reservoir from the Army Corps of Engineers to a local jurisdiction, which is something that we have been working collaboratively with our utility staff and regional partners, but also is a very expensive endeavor. So funding for that endeavor will be very, very important. We have removed supporting a 2-track option of laboratory accreditation, and I did get some help from my friends in utilities on this one. The state has already accomplished the streamlining of this and the designation of one option for laboratory accreditation. So that is, as utilities staff explained it to me, in our rearview mirror and no longer necessary. We have added a provision opposing legislation that inhibits the city's ability to collect water and sewer bills, either through terminating service for non-payment or other reasonable means absent public health or safety emergencies. So there are instances in which that is our only mechanism by which to collect bills. And also opposing legislation that restricts water and sewer rates for certain customers to below the cost to provide service, based on legitimate public interests such as affordable housing, senior housing, nonprofit, public beneficial uses, and or other educational uses. So trying to balance within the context of the Proposition 218 restrictions on not charging disproportionately members of the same ratepayer class for different levels of services, but allowing the city to look at some flexibility for equity reasons consistent with city public policy objectives. Next slide. And then changes to our Central Coast Community Energy Policy Board of Operations. These first couple are really just about changes in name and the change to from Monterey Bay Community Energy to 3CE, and also adding supporting 3CE investment in and support for distributed energy resources such as rooftop solar, demand response, and energy efficiency, again aligning with our climate action, major city goals, and council policy objectives. Next slide. And added supporting programs that provide funding, technical support, or legislation that promotes grid independence and resiliency. And also supporting fair distribution of resources and representation among, we've got a typo there, 3CE member jurisdictions, which may also entail supporting local presence and staffing, as well as, I'm sorry, we removed that one because that's already happened through the 3CE change, and also the marketing approach to 3CE to be a more regionally inclusive branding. Next. And then we had a couple of council suggested additions that were conveyed to my office. And so we wanted to present those for your consideration. And one was to add to the county and regional priorities, supporting the Integrated Waste Management Authority's legislative platform where consistent with the city's adopted policies, platforms, and public policy and project objectives. And also adding to the county and regional priorities, supporting regionally led and funded efforts to explore public banking. So we will be looking for some council direction, majority direction on those two proposed additions. And with that, I can address any council questions and ask staff to weigh in if we need more detail on anything. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm grateful that we have a more public and sort of robust conversation about the legislative platform than we had in previous times. As I've, as the one that gets a lot of these requests to send letters, it's really useful to just have a more streamlined way of doing all of that. So thank you. Councilmember Christensen.
Yes, thank you very much for the review, Christine. And as far as the two added ones, I do have major concerns around the public banking request. I think, I don't know if we have to do public comment, but I just feel like there's a lot more to that than people understand, and I'm not willing to just blanketly support pursuance of public banking just as an automatic thing for under our legislative platform. I'm not in favor of that. So maybe somebody wants to, staff wants to talk about it. I don't know, but this is one of those things that I've gone through several times. And so I know there's a lot more things to it than just doing it. And it's, in terms of energy, time, resources, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's workable. I don't think we're ready for it. I'm not willing to, it's kind of like one of those things, healthcare reform. It's like there's a lot of different meanings to that. So anyway, I'm not in favor of it, of adding it to our, I'm not saying a specific proposal I might be in favor of, but just in terms of blanket support in our legislative platform, I'm not in favor of it.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much, Christine. One quick question. On page 189, packet page 189, I think it's number 9. I think I might have erased. It says supporting to join 3CE regional efforts. So is that advocacy to help the other members of our community that have not joined 3CE? Is that what that means?
That's correct.
That's
Councilman.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just wanting a little bit of clarity on that one. If we were for some reason going to include public banking as part of our process in the future that seems to go with our major city goals for some reason, then I think we could always talk about that in the future, but I don't think we need to include that in our legislative action.
Councilmember Pease?
Thank you. And I was the one who had brought up the public banking, and at this point I agree that it shouldn't go in there. I've done some more research since that initial email, so we can take that off the table as far as I'm concerned. I do have just a couple of questions. One with the added language about the safety of transportation and relying on the experts on bike safety, et cetera. Would that allow, we got correspondence today about AB 122 specific to my favorite way to bike with that kind of a little bit of a roll on stop signs. Is that the kind of thing that would be allowed if it's recommended by one of those organizations as kind of part of our platform, or is that too specific?
I think that I am not familiar enough with the complete legislation on AB 122, I think, to tell you. It would be the kind of request that we would evaluate under this platform, and if consistent with those regulatory bodies and safety standards bodies, that could be the kind of thing that we advocate for. As I sit here tonight, I don't know enough about that legislation to speak directly to that. But that is precisely the kind of request that comes in under the platform that we evaluate for consistency with the platform. And we would communicate to the council, either we've evaluated it, all of the safety regulating entities are in alignment and supportive, or not. And then recommend to you either we believe it's in alignment and can move forward, or it would be something that would need to be brought forward for a more robust discussion for the council. And
okay, great.
So my office and Derek do that analysis fairly routinely with the requests that come in from your constituents for that type of thing.
Great. So they could even check to see, do the homework ahead of time and see where those organizations are landing on that. Great.
Yes.
And then I guess the other one, and I apologize that I didn't send it ahead of time, and so I don't think it's necessarily something that we're going to be able to incorporate today, unless there are others that want to, which is this Climate Safe California platform. It's put out by the Climate Center. It has kind of 4 main areas, 4 kind of pillars that align with a lot of what we have going on already. Accelerate the fossil fuel phase out, scale up nature-based sequestration, invest in community resilience for all Californians, and then advocating to the state. These are all advocacy to the state to fund climate action now. What would be the process if we wanted to, individually, we might be able to endorse this platform, but as a council, would this need to is this big enough that it would have to come back separately, or is there enough components that would kind of fit under with some minor modifications with our platform? Is that making sense as a question?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Pease, I would need to seek some guidance from our sustainability staff on that front.
Okay. I would say, in looking at the climate action section, I think it's important to remember that, this is the legislative platform, and then you have of course, your policy framework and your climate action plan, and those work in concert with your general plan policies. So we look at the totality of kind of I would say both, the charter, the municipal code, and all of the policies in the LEDGE platform to inform relative alignment. Not knowing the details, that's the kind of analysis that we would undertake. Giving the pillars you just described, it wouldn't seem to be a stretch, but we'd need to understand it more in detail. And then particularly if it's what we perceive to be kind of new policy statements and or approaching supporting a group that's doing advocacy, that's probably where then we would then want to return back to the council and say, this isn't supporting legislation, it's supporting a platform of a particular group, and what does the council want to align with the platform of that group in terms of its advocacy in Sacramento.
All right, terrific. I think that is just the one that Erica brought up. I thought it would be helpful to maybe, I was confused by that one as well in terms of the getting more, joining 3C Ren. So if we could clarify that language, that's for the jurisdictions that haven't joined already. That's all I have.
We can add that clarifying language.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I was the one that put forward the support for the Integrated Waste Management Authority. And I use the same language that we already have in place for the Air Pollution Control District. So it's pretty much a matter of having when legislation comes down, so that the city has the capacity to support that kind of legislation, rather than just relying on the city representative to the Integrated Waste Management Authority Board, i.e. me, with backup Andy Pease, so that there's just more general support on the part of the city. I think that we need it. So, and I agree that we don't, I personally am ignorant about the whole public banking question. So let's save that for later. Thank you.
And it has been fairly common throughout the history of the legislative platform for us to align with the platforms of other agencies on which we have representation through a city council member.
Okay, wonderful.
I could just hop in and just in this instance, if the IWMA platform diverges in some way with our own policy or vision, et cetera, then if we're asked to make a request that's inconsistent, then that would be a point where we return to council if there's interest in putting forward something that we feel, hey, wait a minute, this ain't, even though the IWA has this in their ledge platform, it may not fully align with the cities, and there seems to be a conflict, and we have the council then resolve that.
Well, isn't that what the
what
the language says? It says we're not going to support it if it isn't in alignment with us. So.
Right.
And, yes, and I think your city manager was just highlighting that point.
No, I think that that's important. It's important to, have that caveat. And it's in there, so good.
All right, thank you. I'm not seeing any hands up from the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and move.
Sorry. Can I? Sorry, okay. Councilmember Christensen. I realized that there was one more item that I wanted to bring up, and which is just that economic recovery initiative of the Central Coast. And initially, I was thinking that was maybe something that would be added to the legislative platform. And again, upon consideration, I think that the efforts are going to align with our other priorities without us having to adopt an entire platform, is my thinking at this point. I don't know if others who have been involved with that have other thoughts on how to approach wanting to support, I'm in alignment, but not sure that this is the place for it.
Well, I appreciate that distinguishing, Councilmember Pease. I think that exactly that's the point that we were kind of talking about a little earlier. It's a legislative platform as opposed to a platform of supporting other organizations. So we're supporting legislation. So it would be the economic recovery people and the city both supporting legislation, maybe at the state level or the county level together, not us supporting them so much. So I think that's really important to keep separate and clear what exactly the legislative platform is. I think your thinking's right on that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and move stack of recommendations with the clarification on the 3CE jurisdiction thing, and not including the public banking suggestion, but definitely including the IWMA suggestion with the language as written.
Second.
City Clerk?
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Councilmember Pease,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stewart,
Yes.
Mayor Herman.
Yes. And thank you so much, Christine, and to your entire staff and everyone that works so hard on that. That's really
Yes,
useful.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a citywide group effort. Thanks.
You did literally everyone. All right. Then now we will go to council liaison reports and communications. I am not seeing, oh, any hands?
I have a hand up.
Vice Mayor?
For once, I don't have a capsule update. Last week, I was able to sit as the alternate for for Councilmember Marks on the 3CE Joint Policy meeting. And one of the things about that I think is really important is for anyone that is concerned or interested in the slightest around our rates and energy. The rate structure will be potentially changing this June. It will be discussed, and you'll have Councilmember Marks and City Manager Johnson to take this further. But I would highly suggest, if you are interested in the rates and what we're doing going forward, there was a lot of discussion regarding the amount of programs that we were supporting financially through 3CE, the amount of reserves we would have, and there's some concern around the amount of potential discounts that would be given to large ag and large commercial versus, your smaller individual residential customers, as well as your individual residential solar owners. So there's a lot of issues that I would definitely check out if you're interested. The other item I got to see was last week was the Investment Oversight Committee, and this was the first meeting of the year that I was able to be part of, but this is the second meeting where our ESG funds were discussed, and we have a slight uptick, which is great. So it's great to see the type of funds that we are investing in and the type of due diligence and information that goes into where we're at and what we're investing in the future.
And just to thank you for that, and Councilmember or Vice Mayor Stewart, I'm trying to be cognizant when we use acronyms to make sure that folks know what they stand for. So ESG, environment, something government. What is it?
Sustainable governance.
Great, thank you so much.
Twice. Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes, I have to say that I received 823 emails, and I'm sure Council and Vice Mayor Stewart also was copied in on them, from people all over the region who are who do subscribe to 3CE, about the possibility that 3CE might change the rate structure on distributed rooftop solar, basically raising it. So it would be serve as a disincentive to people using rooftops solar, a financial disincentive. And, here with our city, like with San Luis Ranch, we're saying the whole thing has to be solar. And, we're trying to push
distributed rooftop solar. And 3CE is considering following PG&E's move to also disincentivize rooftop solar. So it's a big struggle, and I think I'm hopeful that 3CE will find a way to use some of the community funds that must be spent on community projects to go ahead and address what PG&E is trying to do by creating incentives, or at least providing enough funding that there's no disincentive, and that we can maintain the status quo when it comes to that. It's a huge issue, and it's gotten a lot of people very excited. So I have to confess, I have not read all 823 emails. They basically are saying the same thing over and over again. And I've had IT create a folder, and I've read about probably 100 of them. But this is an issue that we will keep pursuing. I don't know if our city manager would want to weigh in at all on this.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Marks and Stewart, to give a great summary. This is a complex issue. This is really, we're trying to, as we look forward and we're looking at the rate setting for our role, both on the policy and operations, and I serve on the executive board. How do we balance out the programming, the funding? Where is the rates headed? We as 3CE, we've spent over $1.2 billion since our inception, acquiring and pushing solar and battery storage and renewable energy. And so we're at the crossroads with a lot of disruption in the energy industry about where we want to head. And so these are, I would say, pithy policy debates about where should our program funding go? How does it align with building codes and the requirement for solar? And how do we solve, the duck curve question? So where we go from here is I've asked Chris Reed to look at our legislative platform, our climate action plan, and to prepare some comments on behalf of the seats that we represented. So if you recall, we represent the cities of Paso Robles and Morro Bay and the city of San Luis Obispo. So we'll be preparing some comments and some suggested alternatives to address the proposals, and we'll be reviewing those comments with Councilmember Marks, and we'll be submitting them on behalf of the seat that we represent. I think that that's probably the most constructive way to move forward. It was a suggestion that was made by yours truly at the end of the study session, because we realized there are just so many complex issues that this could be months and months and months. And I know that they're eager to move something forward. And I think we've got some potential ideas that will hopefully drive at a compromise of where we think we need to be to support distributed energy and some of the policy parameters that we have on our ledge platform.
Thanks.
Okay, wonderful. Then with that, we are good to go, right? Is everybody good? Okay, we will adjourn. Then the next regular city council meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. via teleconferencing. Thank you, everybody. And have a good evening and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you Thursday.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.